Across the galaxy lies an unseen current of power, shaping destiny and linking all living beings. For ages, the Jedi believed they understood its rhythm, light and dark, harmony and corruption, the eternal struggle between opposing sides. Yet everything changes when a force arrives that does not belong to this cosmic order, one capable of ripping through reality itself. A power born from pure, unrestrained rage, unaided by midi-chlorians and untouched by the galaxy's natural balance, erupts into a universe completely unprepared for its overwhelming fury. The Outer Rim mining colony of Pagalis Minor had operated in obscurity for 17 standard years. 300 Imperial workers extracted cortosis ore from the planet's crust, their quotas monitored by a garrison of 20 stormtroopers and 2 ATST walkers. It was a posting so unremarkable that assignment there was considered punishment duty. The miners joked that the only excitement came from equipment malfunctions and the occasional dust storm. That changed when the sky split open. At 0847 local time, every sensor array within 50 kilometers screamed warnings. The tear appeared directly above the colony, a wound in space itself, hemorrhaging radiation across spectrums that shouldn't exist. Colors that had no names in any known language pulsed through the gash. And for 3 seconds, the air itself tasted like copper and ozone, and something that made teeth ache and bones vibrate at frequencies that defied Imperial physics. Then something fell through. It wasn't a ship. The entry burn was wrong, too green, too violent, trailing energy that sensors registered as gamma radiation despite gamma radiation not existing in their database of recognized threats. The object hit the surface 9 kilometers from the main colony with the force of a tactical orbital strike. The shockwave shattered every window in the administrative complex. Seismic monitors registered 6.7 on the Richter scale. The impact crater measured 100 meters across and 30 meters deep, glowing with residual energy that made Geiger counters malfunction. Lieutenant Heskin of the Imperial Garrison activated his comlink with hands that shook despite his training. "Command, this is Pagalis Minor. We have an unidentified impact, possible meteor strike. Requesting." The screaming started before he could finish. It came from the workers at Mining Shaft 7, closest to the impact site. Not screams of injury, screams of pure terror. The kind of screams that came from prey animals watching a predator emerge from darkness. Heskin switched frequencies, trying to raise the shaft foreman, but got only static, punctuated by sounds that made his stomach turn. Tearing metal, crumbling stone, and underneath it all, a roar that registered subsonic on his equipment but made every primitive instinct in his hindbrain scream, "Run." "All units, converge on Mining Shaft 7, Heskin ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. "Weapons free." Something came out of that crater. The 2 ATST pilots, veterans Kalos and Dren, reached the shaft first. Their forward-mounted cannons tracked across the devastation, searching for targets in the settling dust. Mining Shaft 7's entrance had been torn open. The reinforced durasteel doors ripped from their housings and twisted into abstract sculptures of destruction. The prefab barracks nearby had collapsed entirely, and scattered across the rocky ground were pieces of stormtrooper armor, empty and cracked like discarded shells. "Command, we have bodies," Kalos reported, his voice tight. "Negative. Correction, we have armor. No bodies inside." Whatever did this, the walker exploded, not from weapons fire. Something hit it from below, rising from the mining shaft with such force that the 20-ton vehicle went airborne. Metal shrieked as massive hands closed around the walker's legs and simply crushed them, compacting durasteel and hydraulics into twisted ruin. Kalos had time for one truncated scream before the entire cockpit crumpled inward like an aluminum can. The second ATST pivoted, cannons firing on full automatic. Blaster bolts hammered into the thing that had killed Kalos, each impact flaring bright against green skin that seemed to absorb the energy and convert it into rage. The creature roared a sound that shattered the walker's viewport and made Dren's ears bleed and charged. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body a monument to impossible musculature wrapped in green skin that rippled with veins pulsing sickly gamma light. Its hands could palm a human skull, tipped with fingers thick as cables and capable of tearing durasteel like tissue paper. But it was the eyes that would haunt the recordings, eyes that burned with mindless fury, reflecting no trace of reason or mercy or anything remotely human. Dren fired everything: chin guns, grenade launcher, even the walker's emergency flares. The creature walked through the barrage like a man walking through rain. When it reached the ATST, it didn't bother with finesse. It grabbed the walker's left leg and lifted. 20 tons of Imperial war machine rose into the air like a child's toy. The creature spun once, building momentum, then released. The walker sailed 30 meters before crashing into the colony's main power generator. The explosion lit the morning sky, and when the smoke cleared, the generator complex was gone. Emergency lighting flickered on across the colony, bathing everything in blood-red warning light. Lieutenant Heskin watched from the command center, his face illuminated by security monitors showing different angles of the same nightmare. Stormtroopers firing until their blasters overheated, the creature wading through blaster fire, each hit making it angrier, stronger, faster. An entire squad trying to retreat, only to have the creature leap impossible physics-defying leap and land among them like an asteroid strike. "Get me Imperial Center," Heskin whispered, unable to look away from the screens. "Priority Alpha. We need..." The door to the command center exploded inward. For one moment, Heskin saw it clearly in the doorway, the monster that had fallen from the sky, its chest heaving with breath that steamed in the recycled air, its body covered in carbon scoring from blaster hits that were already fading. It looked at him with eyes that held nothing but rage. Then it charged, and Lieutenant Heskin's last thought was how wrong they'd been to think the Outer Rim was boring. The distress signal reached Imperial Center 4 hours later. By then, Pagalis miners' automated systems had recorded everything: the destruction of the colony, the slaughter of the garrison, and the moment when the creature finally stopped. It stood in the ruins, surrounded by the wreckage of Imperial might, and its roar echoed across the comm channels like a declaration of war. In the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, an analyst flagged the recording. Within minutes, it reached the desk of an Inquisitor. Within an hour, it reached the Emperor's advisors, and deep in the meditation chamber of the Star Destroyer Executor, Darth Vader reviewed the footage with interest that bordered on fascination. The Empire had faced many threats: Jedi survivors, rebel terrorists, criminal syndicates. But this was something new, something that didn't fear the Empire's might, something that had invaded the galaxy with nothing but rage and strength, something that would need to be dealt with personally. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The creature stood alone in the ruins of Pagalis Minor as twin suns set on the horizon, painting the devastation in shades of orange and red. It threw back its head and roared at the sky, the sound carrying across empty kilometers like a challenge to the entire galaxy. The Hulk had arrived, and the Star Wars galaxy would never be the same. The Imperial Star Destroyer Adjudicator dropped out of hyperspace above Pagalis Minor, exactly 18 hours after the distress signal went silent. Captain Thane stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back in the rigid posture that marked him as an Academy graduate, and studied the planet below with growing unease. The colony's lights were dark, no orbital traffic, no response to hails, just silence, and the faint gamma radiation readings that made his nav officer mutter nervously about sensor malfunctions. "Deploy probe droids," Thane ordered. "Full sweep of the colony site, and ready a battalion for planetary assault. Whatever happened down there, I want it documented before we engage." The probe droids launched in groups of 4, their repulsor lift engines carrying them down through Pagalis Minor's thin atmosphere. Their high-resolution cameras captured everything: the impact crater still glowing faintly with residual energy, the twisted remains of ATST walkers scattered like broken toys, the colony buildings reduced to rubble. But it was the recording from probe designate PD-447 that made the bridge crew go silent. The creature sat in what had been the colony's central plaza, surrounded by destruction it had wrought. In the harsh morning light, its green skin looked almost peaceful, the veins no longer pulsing with gamma fire. It was examining something in its massive hands, a piece of stormtrooper helmet, turning it over with surprising gentleness. Then it looked up, directly at the probe droid, and its face changed. The rage drained away. The brutal, savage features softened into something almost human. Its eyes, still too large, still too wild, showed confusion, then horror. It looked at the helmet in its hands, then at the devastation surrounding it, and the expression that crossed its face was unmistakable. Grief. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, his voice uncertain. "I'm detecting. The creature is changing." On the view screen, the impossible happened. The massive green form began to shrink, muscles deflated, like someone had opened a release valve. Green skin faded to pale flesh. The monstrous proportions collapsed inward, compacting down and down until a human man knelt in the plaza wearing shredded purple pants and nothing else. He was smaller than an average human, perhaps 1.7 meters tall, with brown hair shot through with gray and a frame that looked fragile compared to the monster he'd been moments before. He hugged himself against the cold, shivering, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the probe droid's audio feed. Oh God, what did I do?" Captain Thane leaned forward, studying this new development. The creature was human, or had been human, or could become human. The distinction mattered greatly for how the Empire would respond. A mindless monster was one thing. A person who could transform into a mindless monster was something else entirely. Something that required interrogation, study, and ultimately, exploitation. "Continue observation," Thane ordered. "I want to know everything about this individual before we make contact." Below, the man who had been the Hulk stumbled through the ruins with growing horror painted across his face. He found the twisted walker remains and fell to his knees, found the empty stormtrooper armor, and pressed his hands to his face. When he spoke again, his voice cracked with anguish. "Not again. Please, not again. I didn't mean, I never mean to." He stopped, looking at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. Then he noticed something that made him freeze. The sky. 2 suns hung above the horizon, their light casting double shadows across the alien landscape. The man turned slowly, taking in details he'd missed while the Hulk had been in control. The architecture utilitarian but wrong, angles that human buildings wouldn't use. The equipment technology he didn't recognize. The armor of the soldiers he'd killed, white plastoid shells with helmet designs unlike anything Earth had produced. "Where am I?" he whispered. Then louder, to the empty ruins. "Where the hell am I?" The probe droid adjusted its position for a better angle. The man's eyes tracked the movement instantly, decades of experience making him recognize surveillance when he saw it. He looked directly at the probe droid, and when he spoke, his voice carried scientific precision despite the fear underneath. "My name is Dr. Bruce Banner. I'm a physicist from Earth. I don't know how I got here, but I need help. The other guy, the Hulk, he's dangerous when he's angry. I'm dangerous when I'm angry. If you're listening, please, just give me a sedative and somewhere isolated. I don't want to hurt anyone else." On the bridge of the Adjudicator, Captain Thane made a decision that would ripple across the galaxy. Prepare a detention team. Heavy stun weapons only. If this Dr. Banner can transform into that creature, I want him secured before he becomes a threat again. "Sir," his first officer interjected carefully, "shouldn't we inform Imperial Center first? Something this unprecedented. We'll earn commendations for whoever captures it." Thane cut him off. "The Emperor rewards initiative. We have an opportunity to secure an asset before the bureaucracy gets involved. Launch the assault transports." 3 Sentinel-class landing craft descended through the atmosphere like predatory birds. Banner saw them coming and stood, hands raised in a gesture of surrender that transcended species. He didn't run, didn't hide. He simply waited, and the defeat in his posture was absolute. The first transport touched down 100 meters from his position, its ramp lowered, and a full platoon of stormtroopers emerged in disciplined formation. They advanced with weapons trained on Banner's center mass, their white armor stark against the reddish soil. Behind them came a figure that made Banner's scientific mind catalog details even through his exhaustion. The man wore black armor polished to a mirror sheen, a helmet that incorporated cybernetic components Banner recognized as advanced life support, and a cape that snapped in the wind like a threat. He stood nearly 2 meters tall, and even without the costume, Banner would have recognized authority in every movement. This was someone accustomed to command, someone dangerous, but it wasn't Vader. This was something else, an officer, perhaps, or a specialized soldier. The figure approached until he stood 5 meters from Banner, studying him with visible disdain. "Dr. Banner," the figure said, his voice modulated through the helmet speakers with a quality that made Banner's skin crawl. "I am Commander Titus of the Imperial Inquisitorius. You will surrender yourself to Imperial custody for questioning regarding the destruction of this colony and the death of Imperial personnel." Banner's mind caught on one word: Imperial. He looked at the stormtroopers, the transports, the Star Destroyer visible as a bright wedge in the sky. His scientific training assembled the evidence into an impossible conclusion. This isn't Earth. This isn't even. I'm not in my universe anymore, am I? Titus ignored the question. "You will be secured and transported to a detention facility. Resistance will be met with lethal force." He paused, and Banner heard the smile in his voice. "Though I suspect lethal force would simply make you transform again. The Emperor will be most interested in studying your abilities." Something in those words, the casual mention of study, of the Emperor's interest, made Banner's pulse spike. He'd heard similar words before, from General Ross, from S.H.I.E.L.D., from everyone who'd ever seen the Hulk as a weapon to be controlled rather than a person to be helped. His heart rate accelerated. Adrenaline flooded his system, and somewhere deep in his cellular structure, gamma radiation began to respond. "No," Banner said quietly. "Not again. I won't be anyone's weapon." "You don't have a choice," Titus replied, signaling the stormtroopers forward. Banner closed his eyes, trying desperately to calm himself through techniques learned over years of practice. Meditation, breathing exercises, the mental image of a calm ocean. But his body betrayed him. His pulse hammered at 140 beats per minute, 150, 160. The transformation threshold approached like a freight train, and Banner knew with terrible certainty what would happen next. "Please," he whispered, "just let me go. Find me somewhere isolated. I'll go willingly. I don't want to hurt anyone else." Titus drew a weapon's sleek black metal that hummed with contained energy. Not a blaster. Something else. The blade that ignited from its hilt burned crimson, casting blood-red light across Banner's horrified face. A lightsaber. Banner's scientific mind recognized plasma contained by magnetic fields, even as his survival instincts screamed danger. "The Empire does not negotiate with threats," Titus said, advancing. "You will submit." Or Banner's pulse hit 180. The transformation came like a tidal wave, cellular structure rewriting itself in seconds. His skin flushed green. Muscles erupted across his frame. His modest height expanded upward and outward, bones lengthening, mass increasing through processes that violated conservation of energy and laughed at thermodynamics. And the rage came with it, primal, unstoppable, magnificent. The Hulk rose from Banner's collapsing form like a demon summoned from flesh. His roar shattered viewports in the nearby transports and sent stormtroopers stumbling backward. Titus raised his lightsaber, the crimson blade steady despite the monster before him, and prepared to strike. The Hulk looked at the blade, at the soldiers, at the ships, in the sky. One word rumbled from his throat, carrying all the frustration and fear and anger that Banner had suppressed. Hulk smash. He charged, and the Battle of Pagalis Minor's second phase began. Commander Titus had hunted Jedi survivors across a dozen systems, He'd fought force wielders who could throw him across rooms with a gesture, deflect blaster bolts with precognition, and manipulate weak minds with whispered suggestions. He'd learned to counter their abilities through aggression, unpredictability, and the crimson blade that had tasted the blood of 3 former council members. Nothing in that experience prepared him for the Hulk. The creature didn't use the Force, didn't rely on mystical energy or ancient techniques. It simply moved, crossing 5 meters in less than a second, massive fist cocked back and driving forward with force that displaced air in a visible shockwave. Titus brought his lightsaber up in a defensive form, the plasma blade positioned to intersect the creature's arm at the forearm. Against any opponent with flesh and bone, it would have been a killing blow. The lightsaber made contact. Plasma burned through green skin in a line of cauterized tissue. For one heartbeat, Titus felt vindication the creature could be hurt. Then the wound sealed shut with a hiss of regenerating tissue, healing in real time, even as the Hulk's momentum carried its fist forward. The impact lifted Titus off his feet and sent him flying backward 20 meters. He hit the ground hard enough to crack his armor's chest plate, rolled 3 times, and came up just in time to see the Hulk turn its attention to the stormtroopers. "Fire! Fire everything!" someone screamed over the comm. 40 stormtroopers opened up simultaneously. The plaza erupted in a storm of blaster fire, crimson bolts hammering into the Hulk's torso and limbs and head with military precision. Against any biological target, the barrage would have been instantly lethal. The Hulk tanked every hit. Each bolt left a carbon score. Each impact made the creature's skin smoke and char. And each wound healed within seconds, the Hulk's regeneration outpacing the damage faster than the troopers could inflict it. Worse, every hit seemed to make the creature angrier. Its muscles swelled larger. Its roar grew louder. The ground cracked under its feet as it stomped forward through the kill zone like a force of nature given flesh. The Hulk reached the first squad in 3 bounds. Its hand closed around a trooper's torso, armor, flesh, and all, and lifted him like a toy. The trooper had time for one terrified scream before the Hulk threw him at his squadmates like a missile. 3 troopers went down in a tangle of white armor and limbs. Another squad tried to flank. The Hulk spun with surprising speed for something its size and brought both fists down in a double-handed strike that cratered the ground. The shockwave rippled outward, knocking troopers off their feet in a 10-meter radius. Before they could recover, the Hulk was among them, swatting armored soldiers aside with backhanded blows that sent them flying. "Heavy weapons," Titus shouted into his comm, pushing himself upright despite ribs that screamed protest. "Rockets, grenades, everything." 2 troopers with missile launchers took position behind a collapsed wall. They fired in unison, rockets streaking toward the Hulk's center mass. The creature looked up at the incoming projectiles with eyes that burned like radioactive coals, then clapped its hands together. The thunderclap was apocalyptic. A hemisphere of compressed air exploded outward from the Hulk's position, visible as a distortion that caught the rockets mid-flight and detonated them prematurely. The shockwave continued past the explosion, hitting the wall the troopers were hiding behind and reducing it to gravel. It kept going, shattering windows in the transport ships, making the vessels rock on their landing struts. On the bridge of the Adjudicator, Captain Thane watched his tactical display with growing disbelief. 43 troopers had engaged the target. 17 were down, 21 were retreating, 5 were unresponsive. And the creature, the readings had to be wrong. The creature was getting stronger. "Sir, biometric readings from Commander Titus show severe trauma," his first officer reported. "Heart rate elevated, 3 broken ribs, possible internal bleeding. Recommend immediate extraction." Thane's jaw clenched. This was supposed to be simple: capture the transformed human, deliver him to Imperial Center, receive commendations. Instead, he was watching his ground forces get massacred by something that shrugged off military-grade weapons like insect bites. "Orbital strike," Thane said quietly. The bridge went silent. His first officer turned slowly. "Sir, prepare a surgical orbital strike. Target the creature's position. Low yield, I want it disabled, not vaporized. The Emperor wants it alive if possible, but if we can't capture it, we eliminate it before it becomes someone else's problem. Captain, Commander Titus is still in the engagement zone. Then he should retreat faster." Thane's voice carried the cold pragmatism that allowed men to rise in the Imperial hierarchy. "Commander Titus understands the necessity of sacrifice. Ready the strike." Below, Titus dragged himself behind a transport's landing strut, blood seeping through his armor's pressure seals. He could hear the screams of his troopers over the comm, the impact of the Hulk's fists against armor, the roar that preceded each act of destruction. The creature was unstoppable. 3 minutes of engagement, and it had decimated a full platoon. Through pain-hazed vision, Titus watched the Hulk grab an entire transport ship. The creature's fingers dug into durasteel hull plating, muscles bunching as it lifted 20 tons of Imperial engineering off the ground. It spun once, building momentum, then released. The transport sailed through the air like a thrown stone and crashed into the second transport with catastrophic force. Both vessels exploded, sending shrapnel and flames mushrooming into the sky. The Hulk stood in the center of the destruction, chest heaving, fists clenched. It looked up at the Star Destroyer hanging in the sky like a predator spotting prey, and Titus felt cold certainty settle in his bones. The creature wasn't just strong, it wasn't just durable, it was intelligent enough to recognize threat hierarchy, and it was preparing to jump. All units, fall back to Titus's order, cut off as proximity alarms screamed. He looked up just in time to see turbolaser fire lance down from orbit, 8 brilliant green beams converging on the Hulk's position. The orbital strike hit with the force of concentrated starship weapons. Each turbo laser carried enough energy to vaporize armor plating, reduce stone to glass, create a kill zone 100 meters across. 8 beams firing simultaneously created a column of destruction that lit the landscape like a second sun. The Hulk disappeared in the conflagration. Dirt and stone vaporized instantly. The shockwave flattened everything within 200 meters. Titus's helmet cracked from the overpressure, his audio feeds screaming warnings before cutting out entirely. For 10 seconds, the orbital strike continued. When it finally stopped, a crater 70 meters wide and 20 meters deep smoked where the plaza had been. The ground had fused into black glass. Residual energy crackled across the surface like lightning. On the adjudicator's bridge, Captain Thane leaned forward. "Scan the crater. Confirm termination." The sensor officer worked his console for several seconds, then looked up with a face gone pale. "Sir, I'm detecting movement. In the crater. Something's getting up." Thane's blood turned to ice. "What?" At the bottom of the smoking crater, surrounded by glass that cracked under its weight, the Hulk rose. Its skin was charred black in places, burned down to muscle in others. One eye was sealed shut with scar tissue. Its left arm hung at an angle that suggested broken bones. Then, as everyone watched in horror, the wounds began to heal. Charred skin sloughed off, revealing fresh, green tissue underneath. The eye regenerated, iris reforming from damaged tissue. The broken arm straightened with audible pops as bone knitted back together. The Hulk looked up at the Star Destroyer, opened its mouth, and roared with such force that sensors registered seismic activity. Then it jumped. The leap defied physics, defied reason, defied everything the Empire understood about biological limitations. The Hulk launched itself upward with leg muscles that compressed bedrock, accelerating from 0 to terminal velocity in under a second. It rose past the cloud layer, past the atmospheric boundary, up toward the Star Destroyer hanging in low orbit. "Evasive maneuvers," Thane screamed. "Get us." The Hulk hit the adjudicator's lower hull with the force of a kinetic missile. Durasteel armor 1 meter thick crumpled under the impact. Warning klaxons screamed throughout the ship. The Hulk grabbed onto the hull plating and began tearing through it like a man digging through dirt. "Hull breach, Section 17 through 23, someone shouted. "It's ripping through the armor. It's going to breach the interior." Thane made a decision that would define the rest of his short career. "All power to engines. Jump to hyperspace. Now." "Sir, we haven't calculated." "Now." The adjudicator's hyperdrive engaged with a mathematical formula that was more prayer than physics. The Star Destroyer stretched, stars becoming lines, reality bending around them as they punched through into hyperspace. The Hulk, still clinging to the hull, roared in confusion as the universe turned inside out around it. Then the hyperdrive's exotic physics designed for ships, not living creatures, hit its biology like a hammer. The gamma radiation in its cells reacted unpredictably to the dimensional stress. Its grip loosened, its consciousness flickered, and Bruce Banner, suddenly and violently restored, found himself holding onto the hull of a Star Destroyer, traveling faster than light with vacuum all around and no suit to protect him. His last thought before consciousness fled was wondering if this, finally, was how he'd die. The adjudicator dropped out of hyperspace in an uncharted system, its navigation computer screaming warnings about unplotted jumps and probability fields. Captain Thane didn't care about protocols anymore. He cared about the fact that something had nearly torn through his ship's hull, something that had survived orbital bombardment and was possibly still clinging to the exterior like a parasitic nightmare. "Status report," he barked, his composure finally cracking. "Where is it? Is it still attached?" The sensor officer's hands shook over his console. "Sir, detecting minimal life signs on the outer hull. Section 19. The readings are fluctuating. Whatever it is, it's not moving." "Not moving or can't move?" Thane demanded. "Unknown, sir. Biometrics show the entity has reverted to the smaller humanoid form we observed earlier. Heart rate is present but extremely weak. No respiratory activity detected." Thane processed this information with the calculating coldness that had gotten him command of a Star Destroyer before his 40th birthday. The creature Banner was vulnerable, possibly dying. This was the opportunity to secure it before it could transform and threaten his ship again. But if they mishandled the capture, if Banner woke and became the Hulk again in the middle of his vessel, "Deploy a recovery team," Thane ordered. "Full hazmat protocols, stun nets, sedatives, carbonite freezing equipment. I want that thing secured in a containment cell before it regains consciousness, and get me a transmission to Imperial Center, priority code Black." 20 minutes later, a recovery team in sealed environment suits mag-locked themselves to the adjudicator's hull and made their way to Section 19. They found Bruce Banner frozen to the durasteel plating, his skin blue from vacuum exposure, ice crystals coating his hair and beard. By all conventional biology, he should have been dead. Explosive decompression, flash freezing, radiation exposure from unshielded hyperspace travel, yet his heart still beat, slow and irregular, but present. "Target secured," the team leader reported. Preparing for extraction, they encased Banner in a portable stasis field and brought him inside through the emergency airlock. Medical droids swarmed immediately, scanners sweeping across his physiology and returning data that made no sense. His cellular structure was saturated with gamma radiation at levels that should have killed him instantly. His muscle density was triple that of baseline humans. His metabolic rate fluctuated wildly, spiking and dropping in patterns that defied analysis. But he was alive, and as warm air touched his frozen skin, he began to heal. The recovery team rushed him to the detention block, a reinforced section of the ship designed to hold Jedi prisoners. They placed him in a cell with walls made of durasteel 3 meters thick, energy fields capable of withstanding lightsaber strikes, and enough stun emitters to drop a battalion. Banner remained unconscious through it all, his body slowly thawing, his breathing shallow but steady. In the ship's medical bay, Commander Titus lay on an examination table while a medical droid catalogued his injuries. 3 broken ribs, fractured ulna, severe bruising across his torso and back. minor internal bleeding. The droid's prognosis was 6 weeks of recovery time with standard Bacta treatment, or 2 weeks in a full immersion tank. Titus refused both. Bind my ribs and give me pain suppressants. I need to be functional. Commander. Your injuries require. I said bind them. Titus sat up despite the agony it caused, his cybernetic implants compensating for damaged organic systems. That creature nearly killed me and destroyed an entire platoon. When it wakes, I will be there to ensure it understands its situation. The medical droid complied with mechanical efficiency, wrapping Titus's torso in compression bandages and administering a cocktail of drugs that dulled pain without impeding cognitive function. As the droid worked, Titus reviewed the engagement footage on a datapad, studying every moment of the Hulk's rampage with the attention of a predator learning his prey's patterns. The creature was strong, stronger than anything he'd encountered, but it wasn't invulnerable. The lightsaber had cut it. Even if the wound healed instantly, the orbital strike had damaged it significantly, even if it regenerated. And most importantly, it had weaknesses. The transformation seemed tied to the human's emotional state. Control the human's emotions, and you might control the transformations. Or you simply keep the human constantly sedated and extract what genetic material you can for Imperial weapons development. Titus smiled beneath his helmet. The Emperor would be pleased. In the detention cell, Banner's eyes opened. For several seconds, he simply stared at the ceiling, his mind processing sensations and memories that felt dreamlike in their impossibility. Vacuum. Cold. The sensation of hyperspace tearing at his cells. He'd survived. Somehow, impossibly, he'd survived. He sat up slowly, his body aching in ways that told him he'd been badly hurt even if the injuries had healed. He was wearing the same shredded purple pants, now stiff with frost damage. The cell around him was sparse metal walls, a single bunk, a waste disposal unit, and absolutely nothing that could be used as a weapon or tool. "Hello?" Banner called out, his voice hoarse. "Is anyone there?" A viewport opened in the wall, revealing a corridor beyond, and 2 stormtroopers standing guard. Between them stood a figure in black armor, and even through the viewport's reinforced transparisteel, Banner could feel the malevolence radiating from him. "Dr. Banner." Commander Titus's voice came through speakers embedded in the ceiling. "You're awake. Good. We have much to discuss." Banner stood, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Where am I?" "Aboard the Imperial Star Destroyer Adjudicator. You've been unconscious for approximately 47 minutes. During that time, we've analyzed the recordings of your transformation. Quite remarkable. The Empire has never encountered anything like you. I need to speak with whoever's in charge," Banner said, forcing calm into his voice despite his racing heart. "There's been a misunderstanding. I don't know how I got to this galaxy, but I'm not a threat. The Hulk, the other guy, he only appears when I'm threatened or stressed. If you just let me go somewhere isolated." "Let you go?" Titus's laugh was cold. "Doctor, you destroyed an Imperial colony, killed 43 Imperial personnel, damaged a Star Destroyer, and you think we'll simply release you?" Banner's pulse spiked. He felt it happening, the adrenaline response, the cellular change beginning at the edges of his consciousness. "Please, you don't understand. If you threaten me, if you hurt me, he'll come back. And he's stronger when he's angry. I can't control him when he's really angry." "Yes, we observed that." Titus gestured, and the viewport displayed footage of the Hulk tearing through stormtroopers. "The angrier he gets, the stronger he becomes. A fascinating adaptation. The Emperor's scientists will enjoy studying how your biology achieves such feats." "No." Banner backed away from the viewport, shaking his head. "No, I won't be a lab rat again. I've spent years running from people who wanted to use me, cut me apart, turn me into a weapon. I won't." His heart rate hit 120. The walls of the cell suddenly felt too close. The stormtroopers outside raised their weapons. Titus watched with clinical interest. and Banner realized with horror that they were doing this deliberately. They were trying to make him transform in a controlled environment, to study the process, to see if the cell could hold the Hulk. "You're making a mistake," Banner whispered, his skin beginning to flush green. "The cell won't hold him. Nothing holds him when he's really angry." "We shall see," Titus replied. "Increase stress levels. Activate pain compliance systems." The floor beneath Banner's feet electrified. Current surged through his body, making every nerve scream. It wasn't enough to kill. Imperial detention technology was designed to torture, not terminate. But it was more than enough to push Banner past his threshold. The transformation took 3 seconds. Banner's screams of pain became the Hulk's roar of rage. Green skin erupted across his frame. Muscles expanded like inflating balloons. The ceiling, designed for human-sized prisoners, suddenly became too low as the Hulk rose to its full 3-meter height. Head bent at an uncomfortable angle, the Hulk looked at Titus through the viewport, looked at the walls holding it captive, and spoke with a voice like grinding stone. "Hulk, smash puny walls." It punched the durasteel barrier with both fists. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire detention block. Alarm klaxons screamed. The durasteel, 3 meters thick, designed to hold force wielders, cracked. Titus's eyes widened behind his helmet. "Impossible. That metal is..." The Hulk punched again. The crack became a fissure. The fissure became a hole. "Full suppression," Titus shouted. "All emitters, maximum output." 50 stun emitters embedded in the cell's walls fired simultaneously. Energy washed over the Hulk in waves designed to override neural function and induce immediate unconsciousness. Against any biological target, it was instant and absolute. The Hulk tanked it. Its body spasmed from the electrical assault, muscles locking up, but the creature simply roared through the pain and punched the wall a 3rd time. The entire section of durasteel tore free, a 3-meter disc of metal that the Hulk held like a shield. "Emergency bulkheads," someone screamed. "Seal the detention block." Massive blast doors began descending from the ceiling, designed to contain hull breaches and security incidents. The Hulk threw the durasteel disc like a frisbee. It spun through the air, trailing sparks, and embedded itself in the descending blast door. Metal shrieked as the disc cut halfway through, jamming the door's mechanism. The Hulk charged through the gap before the door could close, emerging into the corridor where stormtroopers scrambled to form defensive positions. It saw Titus backing away, saw the black armor and the crimson lightsaber igniting, and remembered pain. "Hurting man pay." The Hulk bellowed. Titus brought his lightsaber up, calling on every technique the Inquisitorius had taught him. He was skilled, he was trained, he was enhanced with cybernetics that made him faster than human baseline. It didn't matter. The Hulk was too strong, too fast, too angry, and somewhere deep in its gamma-irradiated brain, it had learned that the glowing red blade could hurt it. The creature didn't give Titus room to strike. It simply grabbed a fallen blast door panel and used it as a battering ram, swinging with force that sent Titus flying backward. The Inquisitor hit a wall hard enough to crater the durasteel. His lightsaber flew from nerveless fingers. His vision swam. Through fading consciousness, he heard the Hulk's footsteps approaching, felt the deck plating shake with each step, and knew with absolute certainty that he was about to die. Then Captain Thane's voice echoed through the ship's PA system, cold and precise. "All personnel, evacuate detention block sections 12 through 22. Sealing blast doors and venting atmosphere in 30 seconds. The Hulk paused, cocking its head in confusion at the announcement. Titus, slumped against the wall, managed one gasping laugh through broken ribs. "You fool, you just made it." Angrier, the blast doors slammed shut with finality. And in the detention block, the Hulk realized it was trapped again. Its roar shook the entire ship. The venting of atmosphere from detention block sections 12 through 22 was supposed to be a simple procedure. Open the external airlocks, let vacuum do the work, problem solved. Against any biological threat, even Force sensitives who could hold their breath and survive limited exposure. It was a death sentence. The Adjudicator's engineering crew had executed the procedure dozens of times for hull breaches and contamination protocols. They'd never done it with the Hulk inside. The external airlocks opened with hydraulic precision. Air rushed out in a howling gale, carrying loose objects, debris, and anything not magnetically secured toward the void of space. Pressure dropped from standard atmosphere to 0 in 18 seconds. Temperature plummeted to -200 degrees Celsius. It was violent, absolute, and should have been lethal. The Hulk stood in the center of the maelstrom, feet planted against the deck plating, and simply endured. Its skin darkened to a deeper green as gamma radiation in its cells compensated for the environmental stress. Its eyes watered and froze, then healed. Its lungs expelled air in a roar that had no medium to carry sound. Then adapted cellular respiration, shifting to something that didn't require oxygen, drawing energy directly from the gamma that suffused every atom of its being. On the bridge, Captain Thane watched sensor readings with mounting horror. "Life signs? Still active, sir," the sensor officer reported, his voice hollow. "Actually, they're increasing. Heart rate elevated to 200 beats per minute. Muscle density expanding. Sir, I think the vacuum exposure is making it angrier." Thane's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. How is it surviving in hard vacuum? No one had an answer. The science didn't work. Biology didn't work that way. But the Hulk's rage transcended biology, transcended physics, transcended the comfortable rules that governed Imperial understanding of the universe. In the detention block, the Hulk grabbed the sealed blast door that separated it from the rest of the ship. Its fingers dug into durasteel designed to withstand capital ship weapons fire. Muscles bunched across its shoulders and back, definition visible even through green skin that steamed with gamma heat. And it pulled. The blast door groaned. Metal stressed beyond its design tolerances began to warp. Rivets popped free with force that sent them ricocheting through the vacuum like bullets. The Hulk's roar silent in the void but visible in the way its chest expanded and veins stood out on its neck intensified. The blast door tore free. 3 meters of reinforced durasteel, weighing 4 tons, came away from its housing like cardboard. The Hulk held it overhead, spun once to build momentum, and hurled it down the corridor. The door sailed through the vacuum, hit the neck-sealed bulkhead, and punched through it like armor-piercing ordnance. Atmosphere from the adjacent section rushed through the breach, swirling around the Hulk as pressure equalized. The creature inhaled, drawing oxygen into lungs that hadn't needed it for the past minute, and the sound that emerged was pure triumph. Hulk's strongest there is. It charged down the corridor, smashing through bulkheads and sealed doors, creating a path of destruction that traced through the Adjudicator's interior like a wound. Stormtroopers who'd taken defensive positions scattered before the green juggernaut. Those who stood their ground and fired discovered that blasters only made it angrier. Thane made a command decision born of desperation. Redirect all power from non-essential systems to tractor beams. If we can't kill it, we'll throw it off the ship. The Adjudicator's tractor beam emitters, designed to capture fleeing vessels or clear debris from flight paths, swiveled to target the Hulk's biosignature. Invisible fields of force locked onto the creature's mass and pulled, attempting to reverse its momentum and drag it back toward the breached sections. The Hulk felt the invisible grip and fought against it. For 3 seconds, the most advanced force manipulation technology in the Imperial arsenal battled gamma-powered muscle and rage-fueled strength. Deck plating groaned, energy conduits sparked and overloaded. The tractor beams drew enough power to move a bulk freighter, concentrated on a 3-meter target. The Hulk took a step forward, then another. The tractor beam emitters screamed with overtaxed systems. One blew out in a shower of sparks, then another. The Hulk broke free of the invisible grip and continued its rampage, each step carrying it closer to vital systems, closer to engineering, closer to the reactor core that powered the entire Star Destroyer. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Varus watched the Hulk's approach on security monitors. with the calm acceptance of a man who'd survived 3 battles against rebel capital ships. Seal the reactor chamber. Activate all automated defense turrets. And someone get me a direct line to the bridge. I need to know if the captain wants me to initiate a core overload. The security officer beside him went pale. A core overload would destroy the ship. So will that thing if it reaches the reactor, Varus replied grimly. At least with an overload, we control the detonation. We can buy time for escape pods. The Hulk hit the engineering section's outer doors like a battering ram. Automated turrets emerged from ceiling mounts, heavy repeating blasters that could shred starfighter armor. They fired in coordinated patterns, creating a kill zone that should have stopped anything organic. The Hulk walked through the fire. Each blaster hit left carbon, scoring that healed within seconds. It grabbed one turret, tore it from its mounting, and threw it at another turret in a shower of sparks and destroyed machinery. Within 30 seconds, every automated defense was scrap metal. Varus backed away from the sealed reactor chamber doors, knowing they wouldn't hold. Captain, the creature is in engineering. Estimate 20 seconds until reactor chamber breach. Requesting orders. Thane's voice came through with surprising steadiness. Initiate emergency core ejection. Blow the reactor seals and jettison the entire assembly. We'll run on backup fusion generators until we can reach a shipyard. Sir, that will leave us without hyperdrive capability. Better stranded than vaporized. Do it. Varus's hands flew across the control console, entering override codes and initiating a procedure that was never meant to be used outside of catastrophic failure scenarios. Warning klaxons blared throughout the engineering section. The reactor chamber, a cylindrical assembly 30 meters tall and 15 meters in diameter, began to detach from its housing. The Hulk reached the reactor chamber doors and tore them open just as explosive bolts fired. The massive reactor assembly dropped through the bottom of the ship, emergency repulsors engaging to push it clear of the adjudicator's hull. The Hulk, standing in the doorway, suddenly found itself looking down at receding metal and the starfield beyond. For one moment, the creature stood on the edge of the abyss, confused by the sudden absence of its target. Then it made a decision that defied all reason. It jumped after the reactor. The Hulk plummeted through space, arms and legs splayed, tracking the tumbling reactor assembly as it drifted away from the Star Destroyer. The creature caught up to it in seconds, wrapping massive arms around the cylindrical housing, and immediately realized its mistake. The reactor was going critical. Emergency ejection protocols had scrambled the magnetic containment fields. Without proper housing, the fusion reaction was spiraling out of control, temperature spiking toward levels that would tear apart molecular bonds. In approximately 90 seconds, the reactor would explode with force equivalent to a medium-yield tactical warhead. The Hulk didn't understand fusion physics or containment fields or any of the science that made hyperspace travel possible. But it understood heat, and it understood that the thing it was holding was about to hurt it badly. Hulk not like fire. It bellowed into the vacuum. Inside the reactor housing, something fundamental broke. Containment failed completely. The fusion reaction reached critical mass. The explosion lit up local space like a newborn star. The blast wave expanded in all directions, carrying radiation across multiple spectrums and enough kinetic force to crack asteroids. The adjudicator, even at a safe distance, rocked from the shockwave, hull plating scorched. Sensors temporarily blinded. On the bridge, every crew member held their breath, staring at the fading fireball on their view screens. Scan the debris field, Thane ordered quietly. Confirm the creature's termination. The sensor officer worked in silence for nearly a minute. When he looked up, his face had gone from pale to white. Sir, detecting a biosignature in the debris field. It's moving. That's impossible. Sir, it's not just moving. It's getting stronger. Whatever that creature is, the reactor explosion only made it angrier. Through the view screen, barely visible against the star field, something green moved through the debris cloud. The Hulk emerged from the dissipating fireball, its skin charred black but already healing, its eyes burning with rage that could be seen from 1,000 kilometers away. And it was looking at the Adjudicator. The creature's body language, the way its muscles tensed, the way it oriented toward the Star Destroyer, communicated intent more clearly than any words. It was done running, done being attacked, done being hunted. Now it was coming for them. The Hulk drew back both arms, then clapped them together with force that created a visible shockwave even in the vacuum of space. The pressure wave expanded outward, hitting debris and sending fragments scattering. The creature used the recoil to change its trajectory, redirecting itself toward the Star Destroyer with improvised physics that would make Imperial scientists weep. "Evasive maneuvers," Thane shouted. "All ahead full. Calculate jump to hyperspace, any vector, I don't care where." The Adjudicator's massive engines flared to life, pushing the kilometer-long vessel into motion with surprising speed for something its size. But Star Destroyers were built for overwhelming firepower and intimidation, not evasion. The Hulk, unencumbered by mass or engine limitations, closed the distance with terrifying speed. "Rear turbolasers. Fire at will," Thane ordered. Every weapon that could be brought to bear on the approaching creature opened fire. Turbo lasers, ion cannons, point defense lasers, a storm of Imperial firepower that could reduce corvettes to slag. The Hulk took every hit, its trajectory wobbling but not stopping, its rage increasing with each strike. "Hyperdrive charging," the navigator called out. 30 seconds to jump, 29 seconds. The Hulk closed to within 500 meters, 20 seconds, 300 meters, 15 seconds, 100 meters. And the creature's eyes were visible through the bridge viewport, burning with fury that transcended reason. "Jump now," Thane screamed. "Now." The hyperdrive engaged a full second before optimal charge. The Adjudicator stretched, stars becoming lines, reality bending. The Hulk hit the rear deflector shields in the microsecond before translation to hyperspace. The impact, coupled with the dimensional stress of the jump, energy feedback surged through every system, and in that impossible moment between real space and hyperspace, between physics that made sense and physics that violated causality, something broke in a way that even the Hulk's gamma-powered biology couldn't ignore. The creature's roar cut off mid-bellow, its form flickered green becoming pale, massive becoming small. Bruce Banner emerged from the transformation, tumbling through the hyperspace corridor in the Adjudicator's wake, unprotected and vulnerable in dimensions that human consciousness wasn't meant to perceive. Then hyperspace spat him out like something it couldn't digest. Banner materialized in real space, alone in the void between stars, his body shutting down from compound trauma that even Hulk's regeneration couldn't immediately heal. His last conscious thought, as stars wheeled overhead and cold claimed him, was wondering if anyone in this entire galaxy would ever show him kindness. Then darkness took him, and Bruce Banner fell through space toward an unknown world below. The planet was called Lothal, an outer rim world of grasslands and scattered settlements, valuable enough for Imperial mining operations but not important enough to merit heavy military presence. It had been relatively quiet since the Empire's occupation began, its population cowed by stormtrooper patrols and the visible reminder of an orbital star destroyer that hung in the sky like a mechanical moon, until something fell from that sky trailing fire and gamma radiation. Ezra Bridger saw it first. The 14-year-old orphan had been scavenging in the ruins of an abandoned homestead when the streak of green light tore across the morning sky. Not a meteor, the trajectory was wrong. And meteors didn't emit radiation that made his skin tingle from kilometers away. This was something else. Something that set off instincts he'd been developing, instincts he didn't fully understand, but had learned to trust. The object hit the grasslands 15 kilometers from Capital City with an impact that sent up a plume of dust visible across half the continent. Ezra watched it fall, calculated distances with the skill of someone who'd survived on the streets for years, and made a decision that would change his life. He stole a speeder bike and headed for the crash site. By the time he arrived, the sun had climbed higher, painting the grasslands in shades of gold and amber. The crater was smaller than he'd expected, maybe 10 meters across, and at its center lay something that made Ezra's breath catch. A man, naked except for tattered purple pants, his body covered in burns and lacerations that looked like they should be fatal. But his chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. He was alive. Impossibly, incredibly alive after falling from orbit. Ezra approached cautiously. Years of street smarts warring with something else, a pull he felt in his gut. Like the man needed help. Like this was important in ways he couldn't articulate. He knelt beside the unconscious figure, noting details that didn't make sense. The man's skin had a faint greenish tint in places. His muscle density was abnormal, visible even in his emaciated state, and the burns were healing slowly, but visibly healing while Ezra watched. Okay, this is officially the weirdest thing I've ever seen, Ezra muttered. And I once saw a Lasat juggling thermal detonators. The man's eyes snapped open. For one terrifying moment, those eyes burned green, and Ezra felt certain he was about to die. Then the green faded to brown, confusion replacing rage, and the man spoke in a voice rough as gravel. Please, don't hurt me. I don't want to. Can't let him out again. Hey, easy. Ezra raised his hands in what he hoped was a calming gesture. I'm not gonna hurt you. You fell from orbit, man. You should be dead. The man, Banner, though Ezra didn't know that yet, tried to sit up and immediately collapsed back with a groan. Where? What planet is this? Lothal. Outer Rim. You really don't know where you are. Ezra studied the stranger with growing concern. Look, the Empire's gonna be here soon. They track everything that falls from the sky. If you can move, we need to go. Now, Banner managed to prop himself up on one elbow, his scientist's mind cataloging his condition through pain and exhaustion. Multiple fractures, mostly healed. Severe radiation burns, regenerating. Hypoxia damage to his brain, already reversed. The Hulk's healing factor was keeping him alive, but he was running on empty. He needed food, water, and time to recover. I can't. My legs won't. Banner's voice trailed off as the sound of repulsor engines echoed across the grasslands. Ezra cursed in 3 languages. Empire. Okay, new plan. He grabbed Banner's arm and hauled him upright with surprising strength for his size. There's a cave system 2 clicks east. Think you can make it? Banner tried to stand and immediately fell. His legs wouldn't support his weight. Go. Leave me. I'm not worth. Yeah. Noble sacrifice. Very moving. Ezra wedged himself under Banner's shoulder, supporting most of the older man's weight. I've seen the Empire help people before. You're coming with me. They made it 50 meters before the Imperial patrol arrived, 2 scout troopers on speeder bikes, their white armor stark against the golden grasslands. They circled the crater once, scanners sweeping the area, then spotted Ezra and Banner struggling across the open ground. Halt! One trooper commanded, drawing his blaster pistol. Step away from the unidentified humanoid. Ezra felt Banner tense against him, felt the man's heart rate spike through the physical contact. It's okay, Ezra whispered urgently. Stay calm. I've got this. You don't understand, Banner gasped. If they threaten me, if they shoot, I'll transform, and people will die. Just go. Run. Not happening. Ezra turned to face the scout troopers, keeping himself between them and Banner. Look, my friend here had an accident with his ship. We're just trying to get to a medical center. Scan confirms subject match for Imperial alert. The second trooper interrupted, his voice cold. Extremely dangerous. Authorization to terminate with extreme prejudice. He raised his blaster rifle. Ezra felt it happen, felt the shift in the air, the way reality seemed to hold its breath. Banner's skin flushed green. His muscles began to expand, and his voice dropped an octave into a growl that made Ezra's survival instinct scream. No, not again. I won't let them. The scout trooper fired. The blaster bolt hit Banner square in the chest. Should have killed him instantly. Instead, the wound smoked for half a second before the transformation accelerated. Green skin erupted across Banner's frame like wildfire. Muscles exploded outward, tearing through flesh that rebuilt itself instantly into something larger, stronger, angrier. In 3 seconds, Bruce Banner disappeared and the Hulk rose in his place. Ezra scrambled backward, eyes wide. Oh, that's what you meant. The Hulk looked down at the smoking wound on its chest, then at the scout troopers, then threw back its head and roared. The sound shattered both troopers' helmet audio feeds and sent their speeder bikes' engines into emergency shutdown from sonic interference. Hulk smashed little men in white. The creature charged. One scout trooper managed to fire 3 more times before the Hulk reached him. Each bolt hit and healed instantly. Then the Hulk was upon them, grabbing one speeder bike and swinging it like a club. Metal met armor with catastrophic force. The first trooper flew 30 meters before hitting the ground in a crumpled heap. The second trooper tried to retreat, but the Hulk leaped a physics-defying jump that covered 20 meters in a heartbeat. It came down on the fleeing speeder bike with both feet, driving it into the ground hard enough to crater bedrock. The trooper barely managed to roll clear before the Hulk grabbed him by the leg and hurled him after his companion. Then the Hulk stood alone in the grasslands, chest heaving, fists clenched, and the rage began to fade. It looked around, confusion replacing fury, and spotted Ezra standing nearby, frozen in shock. "Puny blue boy, not hurt Hulk," the creature rumbled. Ezra's survival instincts screamed at him to run. His emerging force sensitivity told him something else. This creature, this Hulk, wasn't evil, wasn't malicious. It was scared and angry, and defending itself. Acting on instinct that he'd only recently begun to understand, Ezra held up his hands in peace. "I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm trying to help." He spoke slowly, carefully, the way he'd once spoken to a wounded Lothcat. "Those soldiers attacked first. You were defending yourself." "I get it." The Hulk cocked its head, studying this small humanoid who showed no fear. "Blue boy not scared?" "Oh, I'm terrified," Ezra admitted. "But you haven't hurt me." "And that guy, you were Banner, right? He asked me to help him. So I'm thinking maybe you're not the monster everyone's making you out to be." Something shifted in the Hulk's expression. The rage drained further, replaced by something almost vulnerable. "Hulk, not monster. Just wants to be left alone." "Yeah, well, the Empire's really bad at leaving people alone." Ezra gestured at the approaching sound of more engines. "Speaking of which, that's definitely reinforcements coming, and I'm guessing you're tired from whatever you've been through. So here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna get small again, turn back into Banner, and I'm gonna hide you before the Empire turns this whole area into a crater." The Hulk looked toward the engine sounds, then back at Ezra. "Blue boy really help Hulk?" "Ezra. My name's Ezra. And yeah, I'm really gonna help you. But you gotta trust me." For a long moment, the Hulk simply stared. Then, slowly, its muscles began to deflate. Green skin faded to pale. The massive frame collapsed inward, shrinking down until Bruce Banner knelt in the grass again, naked and shivering and looking up at Ezra with eyes full of desperate hope. "Why?" Banner whispered. "Why would you help me after seeing what I am?" Ezra shrugged, already pulling off his jacket to offer the older man. "Because the Empire wants you dead or captured, and anyone the Empire wants that badly is probably worth saving. Also, I know what it's like to be alone and scared and have everyone think you're a monster." He grinned. "Welcome to Lothal, Doc. Let's get you somewhere safe before the real party starts." Banner took the jacket with trembling hands, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, felt something he hadn't dared hope for. Maybe, just maybe, someone here could see him as more than a weapon or a threat. As Imperial reinforcements converged on their position, Ezra helped Banner to his feet and guided him toward the cave systems he'd mentioned. Behind them, the 2 scout troopers lay unconscious, but alive. The Hulk had shown restraint, even in rage. It was a small detail, but Ezra noticed it, and in his growing understanding of the Force, he recognized what it meant. The monster everyone feared was still human where it mattered most. The caves Ezra knew weren't natural formations, they were abandoned mining tunnels from a short-lived Republic-era excavation carved into the base of the mesas east of Capital City. Dusty, dark, and forgotten by all but smugglers and street kids, they offered perfect concealment from Imperial scanners. It took them 20 agonizing minutes to reach the entrance, Banner leaning heavily on Ezra the entire way, his body still recovering from the trauma of re-entry and transformation. Inside, the air was cool and stale. Ezra flicked on a glow rod, illuminating walls carved with geometric patterns left by the ancient miners. "Home sweet home," he said, guiding Banner to a relatively clean stretch of floor where a smuggler's cache blankets, canned water, and some protein packets had been hidden behind a false rock panel. "It's not the Imperial Palace, but the company's better." Banner sank to the floor with a groan of relief. "Thank you," he said, the words heavy with exhaustion. "You saved my life. I don't even know your last name." "Bridger. Ezra Bridger." He tossed Banner a water canister and a protein packet. "You're not from around here, are you? I mean, really not from around here?" Banner drank deeply before answering. "I'm from a planet called Earth. In a different dimension, I think. There was an accident, a gamma explosion near an unstable wormhole." He shook his head, the scientist in him still trying to rationalize the impossible. "I remember falling through colors that shouldn't exist, then crashing into that mining colony. After that, it's mostly flashes, rage, pain, gamma radiation." Ezra frowned, tearing open his own protein packet. "That's not a thing here. At least, not a thing that makes giant green men. What are you? A mistake?" Banner said softly, staring at his hands. "I was trying to save people. Instead, I became a bomb that goes off whenever I get scared or angry. The other guy, the Hulk, he's not evil. He's just pain and rage given a voice. And the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. There's no upper limit, Ezra. I've seen him hold up a mountain. I've seen him survive a nuclear detonation at ground zero. And here, in your galaxy, he seems to work just fine." Ezra processed this, his mind whirling. He'd felt something when the Hulk emerged a storm in the Force, but unlike anything he'd ever sensed. Not dark, not light, just pure, undiluted emotional energy. "The Empire wants you bad. They've put out a sector-wide alert. I heard the comm chatter on a stolen link. They're calling you Asset Gamma, and they've authorized the Inquisitors to take lead." Banner's face paled. "Inquisitors? Bad news. Dark side users who work for the Empire. They hunt down people like me." Ezra hesitated, then decided to trust this broken man who carried a world destroyer inside him. He focused, reaching out with the Force. A small metal bolt lifted from the dusty floor, floating gently between them before settling back down. Banner stared, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. "Telekinesis, psychokinetic ability. Your biology must produce unique energy-manipulating organelles. Are they mitochondrial in nature?" Ezra blinked. I call it the Force. It's what gives Jedi their power." "Jedi?" Banner nodded slowly. "The soldiers in white mentioned them. Said they were extinct. Almost." Ezra's voice dropped. "The Empire killed them. The Inquisitors finished the job." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Look, you need to understand something. The Empire doesn't just want to kill you. They saw what the Hulk can do. They'll want to control him, to use him as a weapon, and if they can't control him, they'll try to make more of him." The color drained completely from Banner's face. "No. Oh God, no, not again." He hugged his knees to his chest, a tremor running through him. "On my world, so many people tried to replicate what happened to me, to make more Hulks. Every attempt created a monster, every single one. The Empire can't be allowed to try." "Then we need to get you off-world," Ezra said. "I know some people. They're not exactly the Rebel Alliance yet, but they're close. They have a ship. They can help." Before Banner could respond, a new voice echoed from the tunnel entrance, smooth and chillingly calm. "I'm afraid you won't be going anywhere." Ezra scrambled to his feet, his hand flying to the makeshift stun weapon on his belt. Framed in the faint light of the entrance stood the fifth brother. The Inquisitor's pale, tattooed face was a mask of cold superiority, his yellow eyes fixed on Banner with predatory interest. His double-bladed spinning lightsaber remained unignited at his hip, but the threat was palpable. "The boy has a connection to the Force, faint, untrained, but present," the fifth brother said, stepping into the cavern. "And you are an absence, a hole in the Force where something else boils." "Fascinating." Banner slowly stood, placing himself between Ezra and the Inquisitor. "Leave him alone. He has nothing to do with this." On the contrary, the fifth brother's smile was thin and cruel. "He has led me directly to the Empire's most valuable asset. The Emperor will be most pleased." His gaze shifted to Ezra. "And I will have a new apprentice to break." "Run, Ezra," Banner whispered, his voice taut. "Now, I'm not leaving you. Run." Banner's heart rate monitor, an internal sense he'd lived with for years, spiked. The transformation trigger loomed, but the fifth brother was faster. He raised a hand, and the Force seized Banner in an invisible vice, lifting him off the ground. Pressure built around his throat, cutting off his air. "I have studied the recordings from the Adjudicator," the Inquisitor said calmly, walking closer as Banner choked. "The transformation is tied to emotional distress, to fear, to anger. Remove the capacity for either." He tightened his grip. Banner's vision swam, dark spots dancing at the edges, and the monster remains caged. Ezra screamed and charged, his stun weapon crackling. The fifth brother didn't even look at him. A flick of his other hand sent Ezra flying backward into the cave wall. He slumped down, stunned. Banner's world narrowed to the lack of oxygen, to the panic clawing at his mind. The Hulk stirred, a roar building in their shared consciousness. But the physical suppression was too complete, too expert. The Inquisitor was right, crushing the host body prevented the transformation. "You will come with me," the fifth brother said. "The Emperor's scientists are eager to discover what makes you tick. They will peel you apart, cell by cell, and when they are done, the Galactic Empire will have an army of unstoppable creatures to crush the last remnants of rebellion." No, the thought cut through the haze of asphyxiation. Not again, never again. Bruce Banner was many things: a scientist, a victim, a monster. But he was also, at his core, a man who had spent years mastering his mind. He couldn't control his pulse, not with his air cut off, but he could control his focus. He stopped fighting the pressure, stopped panicking. Instead, he did the one thing the Inquisitor would never expect. He remembered his first transformation. Not the fear, not the pain. The reason. He'd stepped in front of the gamma bomb to save a young man who'd wandered onto the test range. He'd chosen to die to save a life. That wasn't rage. That was love. And love, Bruce Banner had learned in the loneliest corners of the universe, was a far more potent catalyst than fear. He focused on that memory, on the self-sacrifice, on the absolute, unwavering certainty that saving another was worth any price. The emotion that surged in him wasn't anger. It was protective fury. It was righteous indignation. It was the unbreakable will of a man who would die before letting another be harmed. The fifth brother's eyes widened as he felt the shift. The Force grip around Banner's throat didn't falter, but something changed within the man he was choking. The absence in the Force began to glow with a power that was neither light nor dark, but something primordial and immense. Banner's skin didn't just flush green, it ignited with an emerald light from within. His eyes snapped open, blazing like gamma reactors. The fifth brother stumbled back, his concentration breaking for a split second. It was all the Hulk needed. The transformation wasn't a wave of rage, it was an explosion of purpose. It didn't start small and grow, it happened all at once. One moment, a choking man hung in the air. The next, The Hulk stood on the cavern floor. The Force grip shattered like glass and roared with a sound that brought dust raining from the ceiling. But this roar was different. It wasn't mindless. It was focused. It was a declaration. The Hulk turned its burning gaze on the fifth brother. Hurt Banner, hurt Blue Boy. Now Hulk hurt you. The Inquisitor ignited his spinning lightsaber, the red blades casting frantic shadows. A beast is still a beast, he snarled, launching forward with blinding speed. He was fast. He was skilled. His blades were a crimson blur aimed at the Hulk's heart. The Hulk caught one of the spinning blades in its bare hand. Plasma met gamma-toughened skin with a horrific sizzle. The smell of scorched flesh filled the cave. The Hulk roared in pain but didn't let go. It squeezed. The lightsaber's containment field flickered, overloaded, and with a shower of sparks, the blade shorted out. The fifth brother stared in disbelief at the broken weapon in the creature's smoking, already healing hand. The Hulk backhanded him. The impact lifted the Inquisitor off his feet and sent him careening down the tunnel the way he'd come, tumbling end over end into the daylight beyond. The Hulk took a step to pursue, to finish it. A weak voice stopped him. "Hulk, wait." Ezra was pushing himself up, one hand to his head. "Don't. He's beaten. Just help me up." The Hulk looked from the tunnel entrance to the small human. The rage still boiled, but Banner's consciousness, riding closer to the surface than ever before, guided it. The creature's massive form shrank, muscles receding, skin paling. In moments, Bruce Banner knelt on the floor again, cradling his badly burned but rapidly healing hand. You controlled it," Ezra breathed, staggering over. "I felt it. That wasn't just anger. It was a choice," Banner said, his voice raw but clear. He looked at his hand, the pink new skin already forming over blackened flesh. "He was going to hurt you, to use me to hurt countless others. I chose not to let that happen." He met Ezra's eyes. "You said you know people who can help." Ezra nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Yeah, I do. Let's get you to the Ghost." Outside, the fifth brother limped to his comm unit, his body screaming in pain. He opened a channel, his voice filled with a new, unsettling dread. "This is the fifth brother. Asset Gamma is compromised. It is not merely a beast. It has a will, and it is aligning with the insurgent element. Request immediate reinforcement and notify Lord Vader. The situation has escalated beyond retrieval." He looked back at the dark cave mouth, where something impossible had just occurred. The Empire had thought it was hunting a weapon. It was now clear they had awakened a champion. The Ghost was a modified VCX-100 light freighter that wore its patchwork repairs like badges of honor. To Bruce Banner's scientist eyes, it was a marvel of unfamiliar engineering, repulsor lifts, sublight engines he couldn't begin to parse, and a design philosophy that favored modularity and evasion over brute force. As Ezra's stolen speeder bike skimmed over the Lothal grasslands toward the ship's hidden landing site in a box canyon, Banner felt a fragile hope take root. "Hera Syndulla's the captain," Ezra explained, shouting over the wind. "She's the best pilot in the Outer Rim. Kanan Jarrus is, well, he's kind of my teacher. Then there's Zeb, the muscle, and Sabine, the artist. You'll like them. They're family. Family." The word struck a chord deep within Banner, a memory of a life before gamma rays, before the accident, before the endless run. He pushed the thought away. Will they understand? About the other guy? Ezra's grin was infectious. After living with me, they're experts at handling unpredictable. As they approached, the Ghost's ramp was already lowering. A tall, stern-looking man with a beard and a blaster on his hip stood silhouetted in the light, one hand resting near his weapon. A Lasat, a massive, purple-furred being with a fearsome demeanor, flanked him, his bow rifle held at the ready. A young woman with brightly colored Mandalorian armor watched from the top of the ramp, her helmet under her arm, expression wary. The speeder bike settled to the ground. Ezra hopped off, hands raised. "Kanan, Zeb," It's okay. He's a friend. Kanan Jarrus's eyes never left Banner. His gaze was penetrating, and Banner felt a strange sensation, a gentle pressure against his mind, not invasive like the Inquisitors, but probing, seeking intent. He's carrying a lot of pain, Ezra, Kanan said, his voice low. And something else, something dark and bright all at once. It's not the dark side, Ezra insisted. It's different. I felt it. The Empire wants to turn him into a weapon. We have to help him. The Lasat, Zeb, sniffed the air, his nose wrinkling. He smells like a reactor leak and ozone. What is he? Before Banner could answer, a new voice, calm and authoritative, came from inside the ship. A Twi'lek woman with green leku emerged, wiping her hands on a rag. Her eyes assessed Banner with a pilot's sharp calculation. The Imperial channels are screaming about an asset gamma that took out a Star Destroyer's detention block and survived hard vacuum. That you? Banner swallowed, nodding. My name is Bruce Banner. The asset is called the Hulk. I can't control when he comes out, only why. The Empire attacked me. He defended us. Hera Syndulla exchanged a look with Kanan. A silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Kanan lowered his hand from his blaster. Come aboard. But understand this, if that thing inside you threatens my crew, I will deal with it. Fair enough, Banner said, his voice thick with gratitude. Thank you. Inside, the ghost was cramped but lived in. Sabine Wren, the Mandalorian, remained watchful, her art-covered armor seeming to shift colors in the ship's light. Chopper, a grumpy astromech, whirred and beeped what sounded like insults as Banner passed. Hera went straight to the cockpit. We can't stay. That Inquisitor will have called in our location. We're lifting off in 2 minutes. Everyone, strap in. As the ship's engines whined to life, Banner was shown to a jump seat. Kanan sat across from him. Tell me everything. From the beginning. And Banner did. He spoke of Earth, of gamma radiation, of the accident that bonded the monster to his DNA. He explained the Hulk's limitless strength, his healing factor, and the terrible, simple equation. Anger in, power out. He told them about crashing into Pagalis Minor, the Imperial response, the orbital strike, the spacewalk, and his desperate flight to Lothal. He left nothing out, his scientific detachment crumbling as he described the fear of losing control, the guilt over every life lost when the Hulk emerged. Kanan listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When Banner finished, the Jedi apprentice let out a long breath. You're not force-sensitive, but the Hulk, it creates a disturbance, a tempest of pure emotion that ripples through the Force like a shockwave. The Inquisitors would sense that from across a system. The Emperor wants him, Sabine said from the doorway, her arms crossed. That means we need to get him as far from Imperial space as possible. Where? Zeb grumbled. The Empire's everywhere. Hera's voice came over the comm. We have company. Imperial Patrol, 3 Arquitens-class cruisers exiting hyperspace. They're launching TIEs. Can we outrun them? Kanan asked, moving to the cockpit. In the Ghost? Always. Hera's hands flew across the controls. But they've got a interdiction field generator on the lead ship. They're trying to pull us out of hyperspace before we can jump. The ship shuddered as laser fire streaked past the viewport. Banner's heart began to pound. He closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing. Not now. Not with them. They're trying to help. Kanan, we need a distraction, Hera called. On it. Kanan closed his eyes, reaching out with the Force. Outside, a cluster of debris from an old mining satellite shifted trajectory, swinging into the path of the pursuing TIE fighters. 2 collided with the metal fragments in blossoms of fire, but the cruisers kept coming. One fired its tractor beam, a visible ray of blue energy that lanced out and grasped the Ghost's stern. The ship groaned in protest, its forward momentum grinding to a halt. They've got us, Zeb yelled, manning the rear laser cannon. Evasive maneuvers aren't working, Hera reported, strain in her voice. Their grip is too strong. Banner felt the fear in the cabin, a palpable, metallic taste in the air. His own terror joined it, a sympathetic vibration. His pulse thudded in his ears. 110. 130. The familiar, terrible warmth began in his gut. "No," he whispered, digging his nails into his palms. "Not here. Not with them." Sabine saw his distress. "Hey, look at me." Her voice was firm, commanding. "You're Bruce Banner, right? A scientist. Focus on that. What's the tensile strength of a tractor beam emitter? How would you overload it?" It was a lifeline. Banner grabbed it, his mind latching on to the technical problem. The emitter, it's a focused gravity lens. It creates a spatial gradient. To break the hold, you'd need to introduce a chaotic energy pulse into the beam matrix, something it can't compensate for. "Like this?" Sabine asked, her fingers flying over a console. She'd rerouted power from the ship's auxiliary deflectors, feeding it back through the comm array in a scrambled, randomized burst. Outside, the blue tractor beam flickered, stuttered. For a second, the ghost lurched forward. "It's working," Hera cried. But the Imperial commander was no fool. The lead cruiser launched a volley of concussion missiles, streaking toward the disabled freighter. "Incoming," Zeb shouted, firing desperately. Kanan reached out again, his face a mask of concentration. He managed to nudge one missile off course. A second was vaporized by Zeb's cannon. The third was too fast. Banner saw it all in slow motion. The missile, spiraling toward the cockpit. Hera's determined face. Kanan's outstretched hand. Ezra's cry of alarm. They were going to die. Because of him. Because the Empire wanted what was inside him. The warmth in his gut exploded into a supernova. No, the transformation was instantaneous. One moment, Bruce Banner was strapped in a jump seat. The next, the Hulk filled the corridor, shredding the restraints. The crew stared in shock as 3 meters of green muscle and fury roared, not in mindless anger, but in clear, protective intent. "Ship friends, Hulk, protect." Before anyone could react, the Hulk turned and charged down the corridor toward the rear cargo hold. "What's he doing?" Sabine yelled. The Hulk reached the airlock controls. With a smash of his fist, he overrode the safety protocols. The outer door hissed open, exposing the hold to the vacuum of space. The Hulk planted his feet, bracing himself against the deck as atmosphere screamed out into the void. Then he leaped. He launched himself from the Ghost, out into the silent battlefield. The concussion missile was meters from impact. The Hulk intercepted it mid-flight, wrapping his massive arms around the warhead. The missile detonated. The explosion was a silent flower of fire in the vacuum, engulfing the Hulk completely. On the Ghost's sensors, his biosignature flared, then seemed to vanish. "No," Ezra whispered. But then, from within the dissipating fireball, a green form emerged, tumbling but very much alive. His skin was charred, one arm hanging limp, but his eyes burned with undiminished fire. Using his good arm, the Hulk pushed against the largest piece of shrapnel from his own body, altering his trajectory. He shot through space like a living missile, straight toward the lead Arquitens cruiser. On the cruiser's bridge, the captain stared in disbelief as the green monster landed on the hull with a thunderous impact that echoed through the superstructure. The Hulk dug his fingers into the ship's plating and began to tear. He ripped open the armored hull, exposing the delicate tractor beam emitter array. He reached in, grabbed bundles of power conduits, and pulled. Energy surged over him in arcing waves of blue lightning. He roared in pain, but didn't let go. With a final, mighty heave, he ripped the entire emitter assembly free and hurled it into space. The tractor beam died. The Ghost was free. "Jump now." "Hera!" Kanan yelled. The Hulk, clinging to the crippled cruiser, saw the Ghost's engines flare. He saw the stars stretch into lines as the freighter vanished into hyperspace. His job was done. His friends were safe. The rage left him, replaced by exhaustion and the cold of space. The green faded to pale. Bruce Banner, floating in the void beside a wounded Imperial cruiser, felt consciousness slipping away. He had saved them. He had chosen to be a shield, not a sword. As darkness took him again, he held on to that thought. It was the most human thing he'd felt in years. On the Ghost, a heavy silence had fallen. Ezra finally spoke, his voice small. "We have to go back for him." Kanan placed a hand on his shoulder. "We will. But not to that." He pointed to the sensor screen, where a new, far larger ship was dropping out of hyperspace, a dagger-shaped Imperial Star Destroyer, flanked by two more, and from its presence bled a cold so profound it could be felt through the Force. "The Devastator is here," Kanan said, his face grim. "Vader has arrived." Consciousness returned to Bruce Banner as a series of disconnected sensations. The sterile smell of Bacta, the rhythmic beep of medical monitors, the soft hum of a starship's life support, and a cold that had nothing to do with temperature, a deep, pervasive chill that seeped into the marrow of his bones, a darkness that felt sentient. Watching, he opened his eyes. He lay on a medical slab in a stark, white room aboard an Imperial vessel far larger and more advanced than the Adjudicator. His body ached, but the worst of the damage from the vacuum and explosion had healed, leaving only the ghost of pain. He was wearing a simple grey medical tunic. No restraints were visible, but the air itself felt like a cage. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, and the darkness in the room concentrated, took form, and entered. Darth Vader filled the doorway, his black armor drinking the light, his breath a rhythmic, mechanical sigh that was the only sound in the suddenly suffocating silence. He did not speak at first. He simply stood, observing Banner with an intensity that felt less like sight and more like dissection. Banner pushed himself up on his elbows, his scientist's mind immediately analyzing the suit, the life support systems, the cybernetic enhancements, the sheer presence of controlled, harnessed power. This was no mere Inquisitor. This was the source of the darkness he'd felt. "Dr. Banner." Vader's voice was a deep baritone, filtered through his mask and laden with unnatural resonance. "You have caused significant disruption to Imperial operations." Banner found his voice, though it was dry as dust. "I didn't ask to be here. I just want to be left alone. A luxury the galaxy does not afford." Vader took a step closer, the deck plating groaning under his weight. "Your unique condition has drawn the personal attention of the Emperor. He sees great potential in you, as do I." "Potential for what? Destruction? I've spent my life running from that. You misunderstand." Vader stopped at the foot of the slab. "Rage is a tool, the most potent catalyst in the universe. You have merely stumbled upon a crude biological expression of it. The dark side of the Force is rage refined into absolute power. You have the raw material. I can provide the discipline." Banner stared, horrified comprehension dawning. "You think you can teach the Hulk to use the Force? The creature you harbor is a being of pure, undiluted emotion. It is a conduit waiting to be shaped." Vader extended a gloved hand. On a shelf across the room, a surgical scalpel lifted into the air, spun, and floated toward them, coming to rest hovering just above Banner's exposed forearm. The dark side offers clarity, purpose. It can give the beast a mind and give you control over the transformation. No more accidents, no more collateral damage, only power, directed by will. The scalpel lowered, its point pricking Banner's skin. A bead of blood welled up. Banner's heart rate, monitored by the machines, began to climb. 90, 100. "You fear pain," Vader observed. "You fear loss of control. These are weaknesses the dark side eradicates. Embrace the pain. Let it fuel you. Call forth your other self, and I will show you what true power feels like." Banner's skin prickled. The warmth stirred. But alongside the fear was a cold, hard kernel of defiance. He had seen what discipline looked like in this galaxy. It looked like stormtroopers and star destroyers and entire planets living in fear. He had seen the selfish, cruel hearts of men who sought power above all else. General Ross, the leader, abomination. Vader was just another tyrant in a different mask. No, Banner said, his voice trembling but clear, the scalpel pressed deeper. A line of fire traced down his arm. Your resistance is admirable, but futile. The transformation is inevitable. Your physiology betrays you. Vader's presence in the Force pressed down, not to choke him this time, but to inflame him, to stoke the embers of fear and anger into a blaze. Banner gasped, memories flooding him, Betty Ross turning away, the military firing tanks at him in a desert, the Black Widow's sons getting real low lie, seeing the ghost targeted because of him. The injustice of it all, the endless persecution, the loneliness. Green flushed across his chest. His muscles trembled. That's it. Vader intoned, a dark satisfaction in his voice. Give in to it. Let the rage fill you. It is your true nature. But Banner, at the very precipice, did something Vader did not expect. He remembered Ezra's trust, Hera's determination, Kanan's quiet strength. He remembered choosing to leap into space to save them. That wasn't a loss of control. It was the ultimate act of control, using the monster to protect, not to destroy. He looked directly into the black lenses of Vader's mask. You're wrong. Rage isn't my true nature. His voice was a guttural growl, his jaw beginning to distend. It's my curse. And love is my choice. He stopped fighting the transformation. But he didn't surrender to mindless fury. He focused every ounce of his will, every memory of kindness he'd been shown in this harsh new galaxy, and he channeled the change. The Hulk that erupted from the medical slab was not the mindless beast of Pagalis Minor. His eyes blazed with gamma fire, but behind them shone the fierce, protective intelligence of Bruce Banner. He grew larger, denser, his form radiating not just heat, but a palpable, defiant light that pushed against the room's darkness. Hulk, no one's weapon, he roared, the shout carrying the weight of Banner's vow. Vader ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade humming with anticipation. Then you will be broken, the Hulk charged. Vader met him, a whirlwind of black armor and red plasma. The lightsaber slashed, cutting a deep, sizzling furrow across the Hulk's chest. The Hulk bellowed in pain but didn't stop. He swung a fist the size of a starfighter engine. Vader raised his free hand, catching the blow with a wall of telekinetic force. The impact shuddered through the Force, cracking the walls of the medical bay. Display screens shattered, the deck plating beneath Vader's feet buckled. For the first time, the Dark Lord was physically pushed back, his boots scraping against the floor. Impressive, Vader conceded, his voice still calm. He unleashed a torrent of Force lightning from his fingertips. The blue-white energy wreathed the Hulk, coursing over his green skin, seeking to overwhelm his nervous system. The Hulk shook like a tree in a storm, teeth gritted, smoke rising from his body, but he stood his ground. The gamma energy within him reacted, absorbing, converting. His eyes glowed brighter. Hulk. Strongest. There is. He took a step forward against the current of lightning. Vader's assault intensified. He combined the lightning with telekinetic strikes, hurling surgical equipment and chunks of the broken walls at the Hulk with bullet-like speed. The Hulk swatted them aside or simply tanked the impacts, each wound healing in seconds, each moment of pain fueling his growth. He was adapting, growing stronger to match the threat, just as he always did. With a final, earth-shaking roar, the Hulk broke through the lightning. He lunged, moving faster than anything that size should be capable of. Vader brought his lightsaber up in a lethal arc, aimed for the neck. The Hulk didn't try to block the blade. He let it bite deep into the muscle of his shoulder, the smell of scorched flesh filling the air. And with his other hand, he grabbed the wrist holding the lightsaber and squeezed. Durasteel and cybernetics groaned in protest. Vader's respirator hitched. He summoned the Force, trying to break the grip, to crush the Hulk's organs, to tear the ship apart around them. But the Hulk's rage was a feedback loop. The more the Force pressed, the angrier he became, and the stronger his resistance grew. With a wrenching screech of tearing metal, the Hulk ripped the lightsaber, along with Vader's cybernetic hand, from the Dark Lord's arm. Sparks flew from the severed limb. Vader staggered back, a hiss of pain and fury escaping his mask. The Hulk looked at the severed, sparking hand, then at the wounded Sith Lord. He crushed the lightsaber hilt in his fist, the kyber crystal within exploding with a muted crack. For a long moment, they faced each other, the gamma-powered Titan, bleeding but regenerating, and the fallen Jedi, broken but unbowed. The Hulk raised a fist, poised to deliver a final, crushing blow. But Banner's consciousness, woven through the Hulk's mind, held it back. This isn't who we are. We defend. We don't execute. The Hulk lowered his fist. He dropped the crushed remains of the lightsaber. Hulk leaves now. Stay, or Hulk comes back. He turned, ignoring the crippled Dark Lord, and punched a hole straight through the hull of the Star Destroyer. Alarms blared as atmosphere screamed out into space. The Hulk leaped into the chaotic void, leaving Darth Vader alone in the wreckage of the medical bay. Vader rose slowly, using the Force to clamp the sparking stump of his arm. He stared at the ragged hole in his ship, at the retreating green speck hurling itself toward the nearby planet of Lothal. There was no anger in him now, only a cold, calculating respect. He opened a comm channel. The Emperor. A moment later, the wizened, hooded visage of Sheev Palpatine appeared. Lord Vader, you are injured. And the asset? It has escaped. It defeated me in personal combat. The Emperor's eyes gleamed with interest, not disappointment. Intriguing. The reports of its power were not exaggerated. It is more than power, Vader said, the memory of the Hulk's refusal to kill burning in his mind. It possesses a will, a moral core. It cannot be turned. It can only be destroyed. Palpatine smiled, a thin, cruel expression. Perhaps, or perhaps its very nature makes it the perfect instrument of chaos. Dispatch the fleet to Lothal. Orbital bombardment. Reduce the region where it landed to molten glass. If we cannot possess the weapon, we will ensure no one else can, and we will demonstrate the price of defying the Empire. On the surface of Lothal, the Hulk crash-landed in a familiar grassland, shrinking back into a battered, exhausted Bruce Banner. He lay on his back, staring at the twin suns, feeling the tremors in the ground as the Imperial fleet gathered in the sky above. He had faced the darkness and prevailed. But now, because of him, an entire world was about to burn. The choice was no longer about control. It was about responsibility. The sky over the plains of Lothal darkened, not with clouds, but with the shadows of Imperial warships. Star Destroyers, 5 of them, settled into low orbit like a fleet of obsidian daggers pointed at the planet's heart. Their ventral hangar bays opened, disgorging swarms of TIE fighters that buzzed like angry insects, forming a defensive screen. This was not a retrieval operation. This was an extermination. Bruce Banner stood on a rocky outcrop, the wind whipping his torn medical tunic. He watched the armada assemble with the grim acceptance of a man who had seen this scenario before, the military deciding that if they couldn't control the monster, they would erase everything near it. The calculation was simple, cold, and utterly inhuman. He looked at the grasslands stretching to the horizon, at the distant glint of Capital City, at the herds of native creatures fleeing the unnatural thunder in the sky. Because of me, he whispered. The guilt was a physical weight, heavier than any world he'd ever carried. A familiar whine of repulsor lifts made him turn. The Ghost settled into the grass nearby, its ramp already lowering before the landing struts fully deployed. The entire crew rushed out, Kanan, Hera, Zeb, Sabine, and Ezra at the forefront. "Banner!" Ezra yelled, sprinting toward him. "We saw the whole thing on long-range sensors. You fought Vader. Are you—" "They're going to bomb this entire region," Banner interrupted, his voice hollow. He pointed to the sky. They can't have me, so they're going to make sure no one else can. To send a message, you have to get off-world. Now, Hera's face was set in a determined frown as she scanned the heavens with electrobinoculars. They've already launched interdiction probes in a wide net. Jumping to hyperspace will be tricky until we take those out. Then we fight, Zeb snarled, hefting his bow rifle. We've faced worse odds, not like this, Kanan said quietly. His Jedi senses were wide open, and the sheer scale of the impending violence was a screaming wound in the Force. This is a base Delta Zero protocol. They're not trying to capture or defeat. They're going to sterilize the surface. He looked at Banner. They're doing this to draw you out, to make you fight on their terms, in the open, where they can hit you with everything. Banner nodded. I know. And they're right. If I run, they'll keep bombing until there's nothing left. If I stay and fight, maybe I can give you time to get the civilians out. Maybe I can give Lothal a chance. Sabine stepped forward, her Mandalorian armor reflecting the ominous light. You can't take a fleet by yourself. Even the Hulk can't be in 5 places at once. A sad, resigned smile touched Banner's lips. You'd be surprised. He turned to face them all, his back to the descending fleet. Thank you for showing me that kindness still exists in this galaxy. For being my friends. The word felt foreign and wonderful on his tongue. Now, let me do for you what you did for me. Let me protect you. There has to be another way, Ezra pleaded, his young face etched with fear. There is, Banner said, his voice gaining strength. He looked at Kanan. You said the Hulk creates a disturbance in the Force. A tempest. Can you amplify that? Can you make it a beacon so bright, so loud, that it's all they can see? All they can focus on? Kanan's eyes widened as he understood. You want us to help you pull their entire wrath down on your head. To be the ultimate target. To be the only target, Banner confirmed. Focus their anger, their fear, their fire on me, while you and every speeder and transport on Lothal evacuate the planes. Hera shook her head. It's a suicide run. It's a tactical redeployment, Banner corrected, the scientist re-emerging with a plan. The Hulk has survived the heart of a star. He's shaken off planetary bombardment. His healing factor and strength scale with the damage he takes. The more they throw at him, the stronger and angrier he'll get. I just need to make sure all of it is aimed at him, and not at the cities or the ghost. Kanan closed his eyes, reaching out. He could feel the malevolent focus of the fleet above, a collective intent focused on the Gamma signature they were tracking Banner's location. I can push that. I can use the disturbance you create to blur everything else, make you the sole point of interest in the Force. But Banner, the pain, the rage you'll have to endure. Bruce Banner looked at the family before him, then at the sky full of death. He thought of all the times he'd been hunted, all the times he'd woken up in rubble with blood on his hands. This time, the destruction would have a purpose. This time, the monster would be a guardian. I'm always angry, he said. And it was not a confession of weakness, but a statement of readiness. He walked away from the ghost, out into the open plain. He stopped and turned back to Ezra one last time. Remember, it's a choice. Then, he let go. He didn't wait for fear or pain to trigger it. He summoned the transformation with deliberate, focused will. He thought of the Empire's cruelty, of Vader's offer, of the innocent lives on Lothal, of the small band of rebels who'd shown him compassion. He forged all of it into a single, white-hot spear of protective fury, and pushed. The transformation was cataclysmic. Banner didn't just change, he erupted. Gamma energy flared outward in a visible emerald shockwave that flattened the grass in a 100-meter circle. The Hulk that rose from the epicenter was bigger than ever before, his muscles coiled like continental plates, his skin radiating a faint, angry light. He threw back his head and roared a challenge that echoed across the plains and was likely heard on the bridges of the Star Destroyers above. Empire here, Hulk. Hulk is here. Come and fight. Above, The fleet reacted. As Kanan Jarrus, seated in meditation aboard the Ghost, poured every ounce of his will into the Force, the Hulk's presence didn't just glow, it became a supernova. To every Force sensitive on those ships, and to the targeting computers tuned to gamma signatures, the Hulk was the only thing that existed on the planet below. A beacon of impossible, defiant life. The lead Star Destroyer fired first. Not a surgical strike, but a full broadside. 20 turbo laser batteries fired simultaneously, their green beams converging on the single green spot on the plane. The world turned to fire. The concussion lifted the Ghost off its struts, forcing Hera to gun the repulsors to stay stable. The crew watched in horrified awe as the spot where Banner had stood vanished in a hellish column of energy that melted stone and turned soil to glass. When the smoke cleared, a crater half a kilometer wide glowed with molten rock, and at its very center, on a tiny island of unvaporized ground, stood the Hulk. His body was a mass of charred, smoking flesh, huge chunks missing, bone visible in his side. But he was standing, and as they watched, the wounds began to steam and close. He looked up, his eyes like green suns, and roared again, the sound carrying unmistakable meaning. "Is that all you have?" Enraged, the entire fleet opened fire. Turbolasers, ion cannons, concussion missiles, a symphony of destruction poured down from the sky, all focused on that one indestructible point. The ground shook continuously. The air became unbreathable, thick with ozone and ash, and the Hulk grew. With every punishing impact, every searing beam, every shattering explosion, he swelled larger, his rage feeding his power, his healing factor struggling then surpassing the damage. He began to move, not to flee, but to rage. He leaped from the crater, a green meteor in reverse, and landed atop a plateau. The fleet adjusted their aim, and the plateau ceased to exist. He jumped again, this time coming down with a two-fisted slam that created a seismic wave, toppling rock spires. He was not just enduring their punishment, he was reshaping the battlefield, drawing their fire onto uninhabited wilderness, away from settlements. Aboard the Ghost, tears streamed down Ezra's face, not from sorrow, but from awe. He's holding them, the whole fleet. "He's giving us our chance," Hera said, her voice thick with emotion. She punched the comm, "Spectres, to the Ghost. We have a window. We're coordinating with every civilian channel on Lothal. Evacuate the plains. Get everyone to the canyons and the northern mountains. Move." The Hulk's war became legend in real time. From hidden settlements and farms, people saw the impossible. A single green giant standing in a storm of orbital fire, roaring back at the heavens, an unbreakable shield against the Empire's wrath. Hope, thought dead on Lothal, flickered to life. The bombardment lasted for an hour of continuous, apocalyptic fire. The Hulk's form was broken, rebuilt, broken again, but he never fell, and with each passing minute, the Imperial commanders grew more frantic, more fearful. They were expending enough munitions to glass a continent on a single being that refused to die. Finally, with a sound that tore the sky, the Hulk did something new. He crouched, his legs coiling like titanic springs, and jumped, not laterally, but up. With the power of a planetary siege cannon, he launched himself through the storm of fire, straight toward the lead Star Destroyer's bridge. He crashed through the transparasteel viewport, landing in the center of the command deck in a shower of debris and terror. Officers and crew froze, staring at the gamma-irradiated god standing amidst their shattered control consoles. The Hulk looked at the terrified captain, at the rows of weapons officers. He took a step, and the entire deck trembled. "Tell Emperor," the Hulk boomed, his voice shaking the very bulkheads. "Hulk not weapon. Hulk is warning. Hurt people, Hulk comes for you." He turned, walked back to the gaping hole in the bridge, and without a backward glance, leaped back into space, hurling himself toward the planet below. A green star falling. Behind him, the Imperial fleet, its command ship crippled, its weapons depleted, and its morale shattered. received a new priority order from a furious Coruscant. A retreat. The cost had become too high. The message had been received, but not the one the Emperor had intended. The monster had not been destroyed. It had become a symbol. On Lothal, the Hulk landed in a new, self-made crater. The bombardment had stopped. The skies were clearing of ties. As the gamma fires faded from his eyes, the massive form shrank, dwindling down to the frail, exhausted figure of Bruce Banner. He lay broken in the dirt, utterly spent, every cell screaming in protest. But he was alive, and the world around him, though scarred, was breathing. The Ghost sat down beside the crater. The crew rushed to his side. Kanan knelt, checking for a pulse. It was there, thready but steady. Is he? Ezra couldn't finish. He's alive, Kanan said, wonder in his voice. He did it. He saved thousands of lives today. Bruce Banner's eyes fluttered open. He saw the concerned faces of his friends haloed by Lothal's twin suns. He tried to speak, managed only a whisper. Did we win? Hera Syndulla, captain of the Ghost, smiled down at him, a true, unreserved smile. You didn't win a battle, Dr. Banner. You changed a war. As they helped him to his feet, a transmission crackled over the Ghost's open channel, broadcast on every frequency. The Empire wasn't jamming anymore. It was from the fledgling Rebel Alliance. The message was simple, and it was spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. At Lothal, the Empire's fist was stayed not by an army, but by one being who refused to bow. If a monster can choose to be a protector, what can we choose to be? The time to stand is now. Bruce Banner, supported by his friends, looked at the hopeful faces beginning to emerge from shelters. He felt the weight of the Hulk inside him, not as a curse, but as a burden he had finally learned to carry with purpose. In a galaxy far, far away, the Green Scar had been born, and the Empire would forever sleep less soundly, knowing he was out there. The story of the Hulk's invasion of the Star Wars galaxy did not end with a whimper, but with a seismic shift in the balance of fear. The Empire, for all its might, had been confronted by a power it could not control, intimidate, or comprehend, a force born not of the dark or light, but of righteous, protective fury. Lothal stood as a testament that the unbreakable will of one being could stall the march of tyranny. Bruce Banner found not a cage in this new galaxy, but a cause. The specters of the Ghost became his anchor, his found family, and through them, he forged a tentative alliance with the growing Rebel Alliance. He was their ultimate deterrent, their planet-sized Hail Mary. Deployed only in the most dire circumstances, the Hulk became a legend whispered by stormtroopers and celebrated in secret by rebels. The Green Giant, the unbreakable shield, the monster who stood between the Empire and the innocent. But Banner's peace was fragile. The Emperor's interest had become obsession, leading to dark experiments in secret labs, attempts to synthesize gamma power that only created new, unstable horrors. And Darth Vader, his pride wounded and his mechanical body rebuilt, waited patiently for a rematch, convinced that the Hulk's compassion was its ultimate vulnerability. The galaxy learned a new lesson, that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not a Death Star, but a heart strong enough to bear infinite rage and choose, again and again, to protect. The Hulk's roar echoed not just as a sound of destruction, but as a rallying cry, a reminder that even in the darkest times, something green and good and incredibly angry was watching, and the Empire would think twice before it pushed too far again.